announcements. First item on the agenda is apologies for non-attendance.
Sorry, Chair. Sharing microphones today. Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Kane of Corby Borough Council, Councillors Eales and King of Northampton Borough Council, and Councillor Pritchard of South Northamptonshire Council. Also apologies for non-attendance from Susan Zeiss, the Monitoring Officer.
While we're doing apologies, I'd like to welcome Kerry Purnell, who is attending as a NCC rep. If I just ask her if she could explain her role. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Assistant Director for Corporate and Community Services. My background is in crime and community safety, so I'm picking up some of the key linkages with the police and other key partners around the things that we'll be discussing today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, welcome to you. Notifications of requests from members of the public, James, you?
None, Chair.
We have none, okay. Declarations of members' interests, as members will be aware, you should declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests on the agenda that are not already listed in Register of Interests. Council members are subject to the requirements of their own Code of Conduct, and independent members are subject to the host's Code of Conduct. And if you have one of these DPIs or significant NSDIs in a matter to be discussed, you mustn't take part in the debate or vote on that matter, and should remove yourself from the room, whether you're a member of the panel or not. Okay, so on to Chair's announcements. As I've indicated, the panel is being webcast live, and so please do use your microphone so that that's recorded properly. I'm going to attend a meeting of the East Midlands Police and Crime Panel Network on the 15th of October, and also the annual conference of the police and crime panels on the 19th of November. They should be interesting. They're very interesting to compare notes with other panels and find out how other people do things. So move swiftly on to minutes of the Police and Crime panel meeting on the 17th of July. She's on page. I just had one issue myself that I picked up. On page 7, the last paragraph, it refers to the details for ACE support. The numbers there don't add up to 100%, and since East Northampton is not listed, I imagine that East Northampton is 18%, but perhaps we could just clarify that and add that in. If that's all right. That's okay, we just started. Okay. So, is everyone happy with the minutes on whether, you know, the way it covers everything and it's accurate, and there's no other issues like that I just picked up? I didn't have any others that I remember. No. It's the 10th. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so moving swiftly on. Actually, on that minutes, there were various pieces of information that were requested. James has given me a list of those, which were learning from 3 major fire incidents. I know we've had that. Presentation given by the Chief Constable and make-up of the Community Safety Board, making Northamptonshire Safe Fund, and those have all been sent out to the panel members, but the police plan on a page was not yet ready. Is that right? Is that still? please.
Yeah, I think they've now finalised it, but it was previously it was in a draft format from the that they're just working through. So I'll make sure it's back out to you by the phone. So that's the forces plan on the page. Will be out with you before the next one.
Okay,
I mean, it's probably easiest if you want. Should we just attach it as appendix to the report next time, or do you want it sent out before?
Before would be better, if you could just
Okay, we'll
email it
organise
to James,
Yeah.
and he'll send it out to us. That'd be fine. So, we move on to the substantive items now, and the first one is the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's delivery update. So, if I can call on Stephen to present his report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before I start, I don't want anyone thinking that we're being rude. As you know, prevention is something quite important to me. So Nikki leads for us on prevention, and there's a national conference call at 3 o'clock. Given by how good we are at talking, I'm not expecting us to have finished by then. So if she gets and walks out in the middle of it, I don't want anyone to think that it's rude. So I'll just declare that early. So anyway, today's report sets out in more detail the work that's been undertaken to deliver commitments we've made in the Police and Crime Plan and the improvements the Chief Constable and I are delivering on frontline policing. For example, the new policing model has now been introduced. Some of you have been invited, if not all of you, to the launch of the regional part, the territorial bits next Monday. And if you haven't, you are almost welcome, which will basically give us more response, greater visibility across the county. In addition to that, I would very much welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to fund a major boost in police numbers, which will greatly bolster the extra numbers that we have already committed to in Northamptonshire. I don't want to appear churlish, but I am still banging the drum to make sure we get our fair share, because this first tranche was allocated on the basis of the funding formula. And when I compare some like Northumbria that gets 185 out of this tranche as opposed to our 57 when we're a similar size force, there were indications it'd be done on the net revenue grant, which would have given us across the whole period something like a 30 extra. But I do believe the Policing Minister gave a nice comment this morning, which we think opens the door nicely on that, don't we? Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you.
Do you want that one? And then,
Yes, we're hoping the doors open a little bit on it, because he was asked a direct question about how these first 6,000 officers were allocated, and he responded to it being in line with the agreed and appropriate funding formula mechanism, which is the one that we're keen to get changed. When he was pushed, it was actually on BBC Breakfast yesterday. When he was pushed, he did talk about how the additional 14,000, which come after that 6,000, could be considered to be under a different allocation. He wouldn't give any guidance as to what that could be or any indication, but I've taken that as a sign that the door might be a little bit ajar, that we should maybe keep pushing that door.
And just for everyone's benefit, so the commitment is to 20,000. It's broken up in 3 tranches. The first tranche is 6,000. Our allocation of the 6,000 is 57. So that's just under the 1%, which is what is of the national grant. But that then leaves the 8,000 and a further 6,000 in each subsequent year. So this first tranche has to be completed over the next 18 months by the end of 2021. March 2021, and then each subsequent year goes 8,000 and 6,000. Our objective in advance of a funding formula, which we do believe the Home Secretary is now committed to, obviously that is why she stays the Home Secretary, because I think we have a general election looming, and what that might or might not bring, who knows. Very easy to understand what our financial forecast looks like, but we're obviously trying to make sure both in the funding formula element, but also in the subsequent 8,000 and 6,000 that we get a fairer share for Northamptonshire. Kind of went off on one there, but I thought I'd just...
Can I just check on that? Obviously, because you're also got recruitment for a tranche, and then there's this 57. Do you allocate them against that so that you say, here's the 57 we've recruited under that, and here's the 100 or 200 that recruited on your other tranche, so that you can justify that you have actually got all of those in?
In simple words, no. Careful how I put this. I don't want to say for once, the Home Office is being quite clever on this one to make sure that obviously we raised council tax. I and the Chief Constable made a commitment to get by the end of 2020, well actually the same time frame, March 21, that we would get to 1310. These 57 should be in addition to, and they will, there are KPIs. It's ironic, they have announced the allocation. We have not, or we hadn't up until we arrived here, received any formal notification of whether we'll get the money in advance, whether we'll get it afterwards. This could be communicated better, is the best way I would probably put it. There's room for improvement in there. No, this is all about additionality. If we carry on with the forecast that we've got, our expectation by March 2023 is we would have over 1,500 police officers, the most Northamptonshire has ever had. I'm pleased to say because we started early on the 1310, that actually we're in a better position, so we're underway in terms of our recruitment. And I've got some other bits that we can perhaps talk on. We have a new training facility that should come on stream, because for those who have visited Wootton Hall, you will notice that we currently train our brightest and best in 2 old porter cabins that do not have toilets in them. So we want them to be the best that they can be, and we train them in rather shoddy buildings. So that is coming on stream. I think at the moment we're probably looking at the end of February, and it only became apparent that we could only recruit in cohorts of 22 because that was the capacity of our building. You'll be pleased to know we can recruit in slightly larger cohorts after February because we can have bigger classrooms. It might sound silly, but that's the level of granularity that we've tried to get down to make sure that they do that. But that is welcome. I just want to make sure that you also know this does not stop me continuing to apply the pressure. I'm very grateful for the Prime Minister giving us commitment, but when I met him when he was canvassing for his leadership, I got him the other commitment. There needs to be a funding formula review. Northamptonshire still is unfairly penalised. Our most similar group, we do not choose the most similar group, as defined by the Home Office, gets an average of £110 per resident. We get £102 per resident. That £8 per resident is £5.9 million. If you're going to have HMIC, and we'll come to that a little later, HMIC say that Northamptonshire is structurally underfunded. That's the basis for it, if you're going to compare us to it. And of course, during that same period, we have grown since 2010 by 9.1%, 115,000 extra people since the year 2000. We're not saying all those new people added to our demand, but by the very definition of them, an expanding population brings with it some challenges. But despite this pressure, we have been determined to do innovative approaches to tackle areas such as domestic abuse. So I'm going to ask Nikki to talk about the work, because I know that this has been a subject of discussion on a number of occasions. So I would like Nikki just to tell us a little bit about that work.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very pleased today to be in a position to circulate to the panel the draft domestic abuse and sexual violence strategy. The strategy has been commissioned by the Community Safety Board. It is a partnership strategy. The version that you have in front of you today has been approved by the board and to be recommended to all individual partners for approval through their own organisations, because we recognise that this is a partnership strategy and each of the individual organisations that are identified on this as being partners to the strategy will all need to put it through their own ratification processes. Certainly within our office, we have signed up to this. We fully expect the Police and Fire Service to go put it through their processes, and all of the individual councils and other organisations are in the process of doing the same thing. This strategy is a culmination of over 12 months' work with significant input from a wide range of stakeholders, both in the public sector but also amongst our providers and other community and voluntary sector stakeholders. And I think it's fair to say that this is not the end of the journey, it is only the start, because actually what we now need to do is use this as a means of formulating our action, our delivery plans, our actions and our commissioning intentions for what we intend to do in the future to actually put in place services and responses to the way in which we support victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence. I think it's also quite important particularly for the community and voluntary sector to have this in place, because actually it sets the context against which they can bid for external funding. So it is really, really relevant to them, and certainly something that they have been pushing for a number of years in the absence of an updated version. Vicky Martin in our office will be leading around the development of that action plan. She's a resource that is available to the whole partnership in terms of taking this forward. So we do actually have someone who's going to be making sure it is seen through and that it doesn't just sit there and fester on a shelf. And that the Community Safety Board will continue to review performance and progress against this, both in terms of things that we sign up to deliver collectively, but also making sure that individual organisations are challenged and held to account for their responsibilities in relation to how we support victims of domestic abuse. I'd also just like to emphasise from the perspective of this panel, with the agreement of the Chair of the Community Safety Board, we have actually dedicated this strategy to the memory of Councillor Mary Butcher in recognition of all the work that she's done across the county in her various roles to champion the cause of domestic abuse victims. And I think it's a nice recognition. I know certainly through this panel, but also through a number of other environments in which I encountered Mary, it was a really key issue for her, and I think it's fitting that we've done that on her behalf.
Yeah, if I can just comment, I'm really pleased that you've done that, and I think it is a nice touch, and I'm sure she would have been, thrilled that, her legacy will carry on. Martin, you.
Thank you, and I welcome the domestic and sexual violence strategy, which has already been approved by Wellingborough recently, resolved that this strategy be adopted. I also support the suggestion about Mary. Very sad loss for us all. But can I just quickly go back on Stephen's other item, if I may? Well, I regret that I missed the BBC Breakfast article. I think I've stopped watching BBC Breakfast. It doesn't actually set me up very well for the day ahead. But I wonder if this panel could actually help in some way by writing to the Prime Minister to support Stephen's concerns about the funding, and that we need our fair share of new recruit police officers.
I think we have done that before, but I'm sure it wouldn't hurt if we did it again.
I would just say, well, thank you for the adoption of the strategy in Wellingborough, but particularly I won't jump up and down, but I will metaphorically jump up and down and say yes, please. At the end of the day, we're all working together. The outcome that we want is, and we're not asking for over and above our fair share. We're just asking for Northamptonshire to have its fair share, and we are making that. It's a real significant focus for us to make sure we continue to extract it. I don't want to appear churlish, because actually we did ask we already have 57, we'll have 191 more than we anticipated through the lobbying that we've already done, but that will go up for everybody And if you're going to compare HMIC reports against everyone else, because that's what happens, they are contrasting, they're not just in truly the absolute, it gives a little more discretion to the Chief Constable in terms of some of those other things that we would like to do and or not. Just returning on to the domestic piece, from our side we've also put a number of work streams underneath it to make sure that we get it. First of all, Vicky is a senior member of our team, and making available to continue to push this through is not a light investment for Nikki and her team, but is important. But on the back of it, we're adopting a new groundbreaking programme with first-time abusers who can be cautioned, and then a tender programme to stop their abusive behaviour. We're funding to help them start the Safer Relationships programme, which intervenes. I get that one stuck on my teeth. Prolific high-risk domestic offenders to manage their offending, and also there will be a campaign which is launched with other partners which will begin in November to promote an environment where the early signs of domestic abuse and people can feel comfortable to actually disclose it. So as Nikki said there, this is not just about we've written a document, whoopee. Now, as Nikki said, the hard work needs to make sure that we all continue to build upon that piece of work. But going back to the report, as you'll see from the report, I've provided an update on the recent HMIC FRS inspections.
We're still going through the report, so
Yeah, but we've asked questions about this.
we could do that in a sec when
Yeah,
finishes, I think. Yeah. Or shall we do the
Yeah, it's up to you.
first?
Madam Chairman, I'm at your disposal.
Well, okay, so if it's on the domestic abuse, yeah, okay, Richard, I think you were first, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think we don't want to lose the moment, to be honest. First of all, thank you. I think it's absolutely excellent, and I'm glad this has been done. And also, I think the tipping in of the dedicatorial box on the forward is really smart thinking and appropriate to Mary's work. Just a couple of points. First of all, it's I suppose the first question would be, has it been unitary proofed? Does that make any sense? Because I look at a lot of the lead coordinators with regard to your strategic objectives. They are boroughs and districts. Obviously, depending on how quickly those things are achieved, it could get lost in the fog of unitary. And then, of course, presumably, each unitary authority will then have to approve it. It's got to be then rebadged, which is it's no reason not to do it. It just needs that somebody is on top of the unitary proofing of the policy. And the other point I have is always down to accountability and leadership. Northamptonshire is a wonderful county with wonderful public services, but one of the areas where they have struggled is true partnership working. We can understand to a certain extent why that is, but nevertheless, this is a big project. It's ambitious, it's bringing in all the partners, and ultimately, we want the outcomes to be less people being victims, more preventative work, and obviously less people becoming victims of domestic homicide. So when it comes to accountability, I'm taking it that the chair of the Community Safety Board is the ultimate person who will be accountable. And therefore, if this needs to be challenged because of a lack of outcomes or because things aren't being done, that we have someone to go to hold to account, to ensure that things are put right. Now, I should imagine a lot of things are going to go well, but it's when things don't go right that we need to have that ability to scrutinise and to make accountable that person responsible for putting it right. So I'm assuming from the forward that the overall single point of contact or the overall person responsible for the whole strategy will be the Community Safety Board chair, and therefore at least we can have that avenue in if things need to be checked. Does that make any sense? So just those 2 points. Thank you.
Okay, in terms, I'll pick up the unitary bit first. I think the unitary bit has been there in the conversations. We are fully aware of the issues around unitary. There were a number of discussions at the beginning of the development of this strategy about what time period it should cover, and a very conscious decision made that actually the priorities within this should be no different, whether we have 8 councils or whether we have 2. And I don't think there is anything in here that anybody in a new authority could not sign up to. It may be that the way in which the delivery plan is delivered needs to change slightly. If anything, you would hope that unitary local authorities would make delivery of some of this easier, purely by the way in which